next up, we're going to hear about what are people thinking right now in the industry and what's coming next in 2016, results of our survey, and I'm pleased to welcome David Card, our research director.
Make sure I got my clicker. Morning, everybody. Thanks for coming. Appreciate to see everybody turn out in my hometown. Welcome to New York if you're not a native. My name's David Card, and I'm the research director for Streetfight. And what I'm going to do today is show you a little bit of, it's part of my job is to give the Streetfight community a steady dose of research, whether that's surveys or forecasts or competitive analysis or whatever. So I'm going to give you a little taste of some of the things that we're working on right now. And what we did recently was take the pulse of a bunch of handful of movers and shakers in the industry, in the Streetfight community, vendor executive surveys to try to find out what they think, what's on their mind, what they're spending their budgets on, what they think is hot, what they think is not, what some of the challenges are. So that's what we're going to talk about this morning. But I want to assure you that we will do a variety of research over the course of the year. So you're going to see some large-scale surveys where we'll survey hundreds of small businesses. You'll see something we published this morning. Eric Groves from Alignable is going to be on stage in a few minutes, actually. And we polled his audience. He's got a network, sort of a social network, social business network of small business owners. So we'll tap into that on a regular basis and take the pulse of the small businesses themselves. But this is an executive survey, and one of the things I wanted to do was find out kind of who's in the audiences here. So I'm going to give you 3 or 4 choices, and they'll be mutually exclusive, I hope. So to ask you whether you're a technology supplier, a publisher, meaning your primary business is content, or a services provider, which might be an agency or it might be a analytics company or something like that. So how many people in the audience, raise your hand, are technology providers in this marketplace? Looks like the small majority. How many are publishers or in the content business? Small handful. And then business services or information services agencies, a little bit more of that. So the people that we surveyed with this poll, which we just sort of popped up on the Streetfight site, are primarily they're vendors or they're supplying technologies or services, a little bit of a bias towards publishing and analytics, so keep that in mind. So let's take a look quickly at what's hot or not. So we asked 2 questions. What were these companies spending their own budgets on in terms of new local or hyperlocal marketing and advertising technologies, and what they were spending their money on in terms of hyperlocal commerce and transaction technologies. So this is the advertising top investments, and what you'll see is the beginning of a theme here. And I love the way Michael said, "Can mobile persuade?" That should be a book title, I think, or at least a mini-series. And the idea, mobile is really front of mind with a lot of the companies we're talking to. Does that sort of confirm what you're thinking too? That that's the kind of the shiny new toy? Mobile advertising, mobile commerce, mobile payments, and things like that. So this audience, sort of the majority of them responded that mobile advertising was their top budgeting priority. Their number 2 priority was social media. And I think, well, first of all, the 2 are highly related, because if you do social properly, most of Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn these days is consumed mobile, so you're actually, I suppose, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. And one of the things that we found in the Alignable survey was that of the small businesses themselves, we asked them what was their most effective marketing tool or technique. And they put social media right at the top. 2/3 of the respondents to that survey said that social media was at the top. And in fact, they had mobile advertising fairly low on the list, sort of like in the 10 or 15% range. So one of the themes I think we're going to see in this conference and with this survey as well is that mobile may be front of mind on the supply side, but might be a little bit ahead of the curve on the demand side. So let's look at commerce technology. So same thing, bubbling right to the top. Almost half of the survey respondents said that mobile commerce and then social media was number 2 again, were right up top as well. And ratings and reviews, I don't know, do you feel like that's a surprising answer there? That actually did very well in the Alignable survey too. So the small businesses themselves said social media was their most effective marketing technique, email was their second most effective, and then I think ratings and reviews was right up there with them. So this is a powerful thing, and I think 2 years ago, if we'd been talking about reviews and ratings, we might have been concerned that bad reviews are scary. But I think there's a good intersection, a positive intersection between supply and demand in this front, that the small businesses and the local merchants themselves are actually pretty comfortable with that concept these days. So you always like to ask what people are spending on and what's on their front of mind. We also ask people, what topics, when we get together next year, are we not even going to be talking about next year? And right at the top, perhaps in stark contrast to the notion that social media is usually right up there high, is Facebook stores and buy buttons. I wonder if everybody in the audience, what's the poll of the audience? Does the audience kind of agree with that? How many people think that buy buttons or let's do Facebook stores first. How many people think that Facebook stores are kind of overrated? Any people think, no, people seem to think Facebook stores still could be a hot topic. I think buy buttons are critical because as we'll talk in a later panel when we talk about search and applications and interaction within the apps, that could be a really interesting thing. Next generation point of sale was also something that people didn't think was going to be a continuing topic. I think this is partially because of the bias of who we surveyed, maybe a little bit more publishers and analytics. But I'm a big fan of the opportunity, and you'll see this in a second, of putting together these new point of sale terminals. We asked also who we gave them a short list of companies, who the movers and shakers thought were going to be big players that would have an impact in the connected local economy next year. Uber, I guess, is always going to be the standard setter. Uber and Apple, perhaps not surprising there. Facebook and Google also got some votes as well. And I think this is probably a pretty accurate representation of who we'll be paying attention to. They may not set the standard every single time or set the technology direction every single time, but these are people obviously that are players and bear watching and do help move the conversation along. So another thing we wanted to ask the executives about was what kind of challenges they were facing. So I broke these questions into two groups too, one about product and services and one about marketing. And the way you interpret this slide is we asked on a scale of 1 to 5, what were your most difficult versus least difficult challenges? And so on the product front, what you'll see is that selling low-cost products at scale seemed to be the thing that drove people the most crazy. And I suspect that many of you, if you're benchmarking yourself against your peers, would agree with that. A lot of people seem to be pretty comfortable that they were that they were good at proving ROI. To customers, and I'm not so sure that that's as easy as it sounds, because particularly if you're selling to you've got this ferocious dichotomy in the local economy where you've got massive companies like P&G and the chain restaurants and the car companies who are doing a lot of local marketing and transactions, and then you have these small and medium-sized businesses who I would concur with the earlier panel, technology challenged, time challenged, which is what we see in our surveys too, and then just not, they just don't have the resources, they don't have the money or the resources or the personnel resources to do things. So I think actually proving ROI on new technologies and marketing is actually going to be a tougher row to hoe than perhaps is perceived. From a sort of a pure marketing, advertising, branding perspective, raising their own company's brand awareness was the top concern. I think this probably reflects that they were smaller startup companies. More so even than identifying customer prospects, which we always find is a difficult, how to make sure your own marketing is efficient and effective and you're not overspending it would help if you could identify prospects who are in the market or hotter opportunities. So let's turn our lens on opportunities for a bit. So let's see what you think about these. So I guess when I was watching Josh this morning, he and I are simpatico. I feel like there is this amazing opportunity. There's a kind of I hate to use the cliche perfect storm, but it is one of these three-part things, so it's actually an appropriate cliche, so I'll use it. The notion that there are these new marketing technologies coming to the fore, that there is a new opportunity to shift out some of the existing equipment in local businesses because of chip cards and because mobile payments and things like that. So there is a demand for a kind of a new payment system. And then there's these, and that feeds these, and the next generation point of sale systems could be fed by a lot of mobile consumer activity. I think that those three things come together and you've got this tremendous opportunity to do two things: to connect the dots across marketing and sales, so do a better job of understanding how effective your marketing is, and to connect the dots between, as we were talking about in the previous panel, between operations, back office and front office. So the operations, how you run your business, and how you get the word out, and how do you interact with your customers. And I tried to describe that phenomenon to the survey base and said, what do you think? Do you think this is a great opportunity? And over half of the respondents said, local businesses just aren't sophisticated enough to take advantage of that. And it's an interesting idea, but it's a few years away. There are some opportunities there. One thing that they did agree is it wasn't going to be a big company that was going to drive this. I'm not so sure about that. I do think big companies will play a role here. But I do think they threw a bucket of water on me and sort of dampened down my early enthusiasm for this. But I'd say this is something to keep your eye on and keep watching. So push the right button here. So what do you do while you're waiting for this, or while this massive opportunity is building itself? Well, this is a survey from our local merchant survey where we asked the small businesses themselves where they thought they needed the most help. And notice what their top three choices. First of all, one key takeaway is it's very fragmented. They have a lot of problems. They need help in a lot of different places. So there's an integration story there. And then the top three: classic SEO, website management, e-commerce, and social media. Asked a similar question to what the vendors thought these small businesses needed the most help, and there's a disconnect. They say they need help with mobile marketing, but the businesses, particularly the micro small businesses, mobile is barely on their radar. I think company websites, SEO, e-commerce, all those things are in sync. But again, mobile, everybody in the room, we might be a little bit ahead of the people who are buying this stuff, yeah. There's a panel later in the day on the election season, so I'll throw this one in there to set it up. We asked people would their business be impacted by as we motor into the election in terms of how big an impact that would have on their business. We didn't have that many publishers in the audience, but you'll see that a good 15% of them thought it was at least going to affect their business positively by 10% or more. So what are we going to keep our eyes on as we go into 2016? I think my big question, big theme, let's discuss it for the rest of the event. How important, when does mobile marketing and mobile advertising and mobile transactions really sort of make a dent in the connected local economy? It has huge implications for search, which I'll be talking about with a panel in a few minutes. There's a bunch of suppliers that are creating walled gardens of data and services. So, Facebook has one set of data, Google has another set of data, Apple has a third set of data, and getting across that, I think, is going to be challenging. I think there is this big window of opportunity for point of sale equipment and blending that with payments and then connecting those dots. But you know what? Maybe we're just going to see the first fruits of that in 2016. It'll take a little bit longer to play off. And that front office, back office integration, that might take a little bit longer. Maybe I was a little bit too enthusiastic about that one. So here's my key takeaways from this piece of analysis. And keep an eye open for future research. Mobile is really hot, but it may be early, especially for the small businesses. So if you're in the, if you've got a good local product or technology or service or something, you probably want to start with the national marketers before you start trying to get beacons in every bodega on the corner. Social is still a shiny new toy for many of these local merchants, and indeed it's actually a shortcut to mobile because of so much of the social media consumption is on mobile devices. I'm an ad tech fan. I've been watching that for 10 years or so, since they've been calling it that, but I think in this space, things like programmatic and native advertising and even content marketing, even though we were talking about it at the beginning panel, or the panel last 5 minutes ago, I think that's probably for the enterprise economies rather than the local economies. I think there could be some role for publishers. Maybe they're concerned with programmatic and native, but they can help publishers can help the technology vendors raise their awareness, and they might even be a distribution channel for some of these products and services, and certainly for some data analysis. And then I do think that connecting the dots is going to start to happen, but it's probably going to happen between connecting marketing and transacting before you do the back office, front office operations connection. So thank you for your attention. I'll be around all day, and track me down.